Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Human Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at the first game of the Women's Candidates final between Zhongyi and Tingjie. So in the preview video, do take a look at that if you haven't seen it already. I suggested that it would be a good idea for Zhongyi to play 1c4 in the first game. The idea being that in that way you'd get a little bit more of a grip of what Tingjie has got planned against 1d4. If black played c6 or e6, you'd know that maybe a Queen's Gambit declined, or a Slav or a semi-Slav was on the cards. When Lei plays e5, it probably means that you're going to end up with some sort of Nimzo-Indian, I think, against 1d4. So knight f6, e6, bishop b4. So after c4, e5, there was a little surprise with a move d3. Now, in my day, the good old days, that would have been horrifically offbeat, but nowadays it's played quite a lot. Obviously, c4, e5, that's reverse Sicilian, and well, white's offering all sorts of possibilities to head to reverse Scheveningen, or reverse Najdorfs, or reverse dragons. And of course, there's a lot of transposition possibilities to other lines. It's a very flexible idea. I had in my head actually that it was Goryachkina who started playing this, and there are quite a few games of his from 2015, also from Vladimir Kramnik as well. But I think the real pioneer of it was the Hungarian grandmaster Istvan Csom, who played 24 games in this line from 1979 onwards, with a pretty good score. So, interesting enough, actually, after knight c3, Lei had played bishop b4 before, so this is actually quite an interesting line against her, because after d3 she played bishop b4 check, and then instead of putting the knight on c3, we can put the knight on d2, get the bishop pair possibly, but without getting double c pawns. So Lei played a line that's been played a lot by Anish Giri recently, just c5, and well, my idea of that line actually was that black is simply going to take on d2 at some stage, just give the dark squared bishop for the knight, quite typical in Nimzo situations, and then just play d6, knight c6, knight e7, and just put all the pawns on dark squares, just clamp down on the white centre in that way. Interestingly enough, a lot of games have been played just retreating the bishop back to a5 and then b6, c7. It's the engine's favourite move. I find it hard to really understand, I have to say, but yeah, I mean it's been done. Tan played knight f3. I think one interesting idea here was to play a3. If bishop d2, we go bishop d2, and well, as you see in the game, it's quite important that there's no way of stopping white from playing b4 immediately. So after knight c6, b4 seems like quite an interesting idea. All sorts of interesting lines in there, but yeah, definitely interesting. If you play bishop a5, then there's various ideas, but Dragon came up with a few interesting ideas. Either b4, and then knight b3, takes check, takes, queen d2, Queen c7, bishop takes a3, or the slightly more exotic Queen a4, and then after knight c6 we go b4, takes, and knight b3 again. And if you take there, I take off, check, and bishop a3. And yeah, I mean this is sort of Benko style play, but with the two bishops, some weak dark squares. I'm not sure. I mean, I think this might be quite slightly tricky for black players to play against if they're not well prepared really. So that seemed quite interesting to me. But what Zhongyi played was knight f3, knight c6 and g3. And this has been seen a few times. One recent game, for example, was between Supi and the Dutch prodigy Elina Rubers at Tata Steel 2023. In that game, Elina played f5, which didn't work out too well. Lei played a much more solid line, which is just d6. And after bishop g2, played knight e7. And after castles, no bishop a5, which is the engine move, but bishop d2, which I think is very, very sensible. Bishop takes d2. And now I was really expecting castles. Lei played the move h6. I mean, it's a reasonable move. The black bishop will come to e6, so nothing wrong with that. It's just I wonder slightly why you do it immediately. I mean, you could also just wait, put the king to safety, and then see what white is going to do. Yeah, I don't know. I'm vaguely wondering. I mean, were some aggressive ideas planned? G5 even, or bishop e6, queen d7, quick bishop h3. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it seems slightly odd, but not bad in any way, of course. Whoops. So after h6, a3 was played. Looking for b4, a5. Yeah, now, I mean, if you go a move like rook b1, I go a4 here. And, well, the engine's played a few games like this, but this is really solid for black. Queen b1, we go rook a6, protecting b6. And when you try and line up, then bishop e6, rook b1, and knight c8. Protecting b6. Yeah, I mean, black's super solid here. I mean, no worries really at all for black. So what Tan did was play the move b4, and well, I was commentating on this on Mastodon as it was happening, and I sort of thought that that this idea was really an attempt. It was very much a first game of the match move. You're going to try and get some sort of position with a tiny edge. And then, you're playing either for a draw or for a win, but you can't possibly lose. That was how I saw Tan's play at the moment. So a takes b4, a takes b4, rook a1, queen a1, and now knight takes b4. Now, what I was expecting here was to take, go rook b1, attacking the pawn on b4, and after knight c6, then the move knight e1. And we're just going to come around and go knight c2 takes b4, and just claim that we've got a slightly better pawn structure. I mean, yeah, black's got plenty of ideas here. I mean, castles, knight c2, bishop g4, bishop f5, just trying to irritate this pawn, for example, is quite a nice idea. Yeah, I mean, white just plays something like this. Bishop d3, bishop d5, and then takes the pawn on b7. It's a tiny edge for white, but nothing serious, of course. But that was what I was expecting, and I thought that fitted very well with what Tan was going to do. But actually, Tan got as far as rook b1, and then played a slightly odd move d4. I wonder, yeah, I sort of wonder a little bit why Zhongyi Tan did it at this stage. I mean, earlier on, this was quite an interesting idea, suggested by somebody on Mastodon as well. Just hitting d4 whilst the knight is hanging on b4. And yeah, this was an interesting idea. Takes, bishop e3. Obviously, if you take on here, the bishop on d2 is hanging. So bishop e3, queen d6, rook d1. This was one of the engine games. And yeah, I mean, white gets back a pawn, but there's so much material exchanged. It's just going to be pretty equal after castles, and then pawn takes d4. Or you could, after bishop b4, cb4, you could play, pardon me, d4 here. Also interesting. Doing it with the rook on b1 is a little bit weird, because after d4, there's this move bishop f5, hitting the rook on b1, and it's a little bit of an awkward decision, and actually Zhongyi Tan thought for quite a long time here, so I don't know whether she'd missed it or just assumed something was working and then suddenly discovered it wasn't. Actually, funnily enough, the engine says that rook b3 is the best move, which I just dismissed for myself, because of this. But yeah, there's this clever move knight e1, hitting the bishop on c2, and after knight d4 we go e3. And well, everything's going to unravel for black. The knight moves back, we take on c2, the b7 pawn will be gone, and then we'll also win this pawn as well. It's going to be pretty even, basically, but it is sort of doable for white. Tan played the move rook c1, and here things got really sharp, and I think that actually probably made me a little bit, it skewed my my evaluation after, during the game, because on Mastodon I was really commentating that this line that Tan chose, just leaving that pawn on b4, blowing open the center with c5, I thought it was, well, I'd expected white to be playing, risk-free for a small edge, and all of a sudden, yeah, there are three connected passed pawns on the queen side here. White's a pawn down, and in my view, desperately fighting to create any counterplay at all. So I was really thinking this was, black was really well on top. In actual fact, the engines seem to think that white's got decent compensation here. Obviously, a big centre here, and pawn on c5 is weak and not that easy to hold somehow. Still, as black, I'd be over the moon here. Just think a quiet opening like this, and look what I've got here. So many chances, so many winning chances. It feels like. Lei played f6 here, which is a very decent move, actually. I mean, I would. It would definitely be one of the major moves I was considering. The engines were looking at queen f6, in actual fact, just basically to pin this knight on e5. When white, plays e4, f4, and wants to move this knight out of the way, you can't do it without exchanging off queens. But actually, again, the engines were saying that this position, b5, knight d6, bishop a6, e5, that this position was actually pretty decent for white. Yeah, hard to really get your head around it, to be honest. But I mean, black plays rook d8 to stop e6, rook b1, and then the engines seem to feel that the black really was basically at some sort of impasse here, really finding it hard to get anywhere, really. It's obviously if the knight moves away, you've always got ideas just like rook e1 hitting the bishop, where it doesn't really have that many squares to go to. Very hard to assess properly, and looks really, really scary to me, I have to say. So I think queen f6, in a human game, I think that could have been very, very scary. But black played f6, and now knight c4. Looks very natural. It's such a natural square for the knight, but the engines actually wanted to play knight d3, which is quite a nice move. You're not worried about taking here. This pawn is hanging, and we're going to get our bishop in there, and actually we've also got the possibility of d4 to undermine this pawn afterwards. So actually that's only very useful. And after b6, well, we just go e4, queen a2, f4, and we're playing for e5. I mean, it's really there is quite a lot of counterplay there all of a sudden. Quite surprising somehow. Also, knight d3, this knight can aim to f4, e6 and g6, that g6 square weakened by the early h6 from black. So, that actually looked quite decent. The more I looked at it, the more I was interested for it with white. Knight c4 was played, a little bit inaccurate, I guess. Knight d7. Knight e3 surprised me, but the engines like it very much. This plan that Tan comes up with of going d6 and trying to put the knight somewhere like this, just to really, get a grip on the black position and restrict the queen and the rook. That seemed to be a very nice plan indeed. And black's problem is really to get these queenside pawns moving. At the moment, it's just the c5 pawn which is tying down a knight on d7, and it's sort of hard to get anywhere really. One of the other nice points about hitting this bishop, it went back to g6. The engines preferred bishop h7. I understand Lei's move very much, actually, because it feels very natural to put the king on h7. But as we'll see, this bishop will get hit later, so that was presumably what the engines were seeing. But after bishop h7, what you've also done is you've kicked the bishop away from the c8 h3 diagonal, so that's also going to give the white bishop a lovely entry point there. The interesting thing about this position was that the engines were really, really keen on one setup here for white, and that was playing the move queen a4. Having chased away the bishop from this diagonal, the knight on d7 is protected only by the queen, so you play queen a4 and you keep the queen tied down to this knight. This seemed to be working pretty well. I mean, king h8, d6, b6, rook d1, and somehow, the black queen has not been able to activate itself. Compare that to the game, and you'll see what I mean there. I still, love these three connected pawns, but the engines thought that, white plays f4, knight d5 to e7, thought that black would find it very hard to really get free. Still all to play for in actual fact, which again was a bit of a shock to me when I looked at all the engine games afterwards. So after bishop g6, here Tan made a mistake actually. d6, it's a very decent move. but it gives black the opportunity to play queen b6, and I didn't realise why that was important, because after all, we're just getting knight c4, protecting this pawn on d6 with tempo. But the point is that, sorry, king's going to h7, but after knight c4, we play queen b5, and we've stopped queen a4. And, you know, somehow this black queen is active, it's attacking stuff, and black's actually getting ready to play, whoops, knight b8 to c6, rook to d8. And I suppose one thing that you do notice is that, you know, these two pieces look great, you know, somehow, but they're not really causing any danger to the black king. You know, they've just been sort of dragged over to the left-hand side, and obviously if this black queen manages to move away and you get him b5, then, well, all of a sudden, you know, these guys are really rolling. So, yeah, it's this queen b6 maneuver would be a great way to drag the white pieces away from the king's side back towards the queen's side, whilst not giving the white queen any real opportunity to activate itself. Also, I think that you know, delaying b6 is actually a very nice thing for black, you know, because it stops the white bishop from controlling the whole diagonal, and you know, easily preventing the black rook from getting active, for example. So after king h7, we got knight d5, queen a8, and on Mastodon I just said, oh, you know, great move from black. Black's just going to come round and win this d pawn if white doesn't exchange off queens, and of course white doesn't want to exchange off queens, not with you know, this b pawn running. But funnily enough, the engines were just completely relaxed about this. I mean, this was the very position that I was talking about during the game, and I just said, you know, this is just yeah, this is obviously very much better for black here. The black king's a bit exposed, but in no danger, and these pawns are going to tell. But the engine's just saying it's equal, just equal, no worries at all. Actually, they just wanted to blast open the position with e4, and the idea is to follow up with bishop h3 takes f5, and obviously after bishop h3, if you go fe4, I've got rook d1 and this knight is hanging. You know, black's big problem here is that you know, this knight on d7 kind of has to protect this pawn on c5, because I mean, you absolutely destroy the black queenside mass if you take that pawn. But yeah, this knight on d7 with a queen on d6 in front of it, and this sort of nexus f5 point where if you get a bishop there, you're attacking the king and the knight, just makes things really, really difficult. I mean, I'd realised that it was tricky for black, that black had to be careful, but it never occurred to me that, that there was so much counterplay that it was equal. Zhongyi Tan played rook d1 here. Not the best move, but bishop h3, to be honest, I was really impressed. I mean, I hadn't realised there were so many possibilities, and Zhongyi Tan really going for it. And there's, you know, there's all sorts of ideas like bishop f5 followed by g4, for example. So knight e5 was played, but here something crucial happened. It was very important to play f4 and drive away that knight from e5, whilst it can't get to g4 because of the pin. Bishop takes g4. Here Tan played rook d5, and the engine's evaluation just zoom goes all the way towards black, because here black had a fantastic idea, c4. The point is f4, we've got this intermediate move b3, these pawns are rolling, and after queen c3, a couple of good moves. I mean, knight g4 is okay, knight d3 is even stronger. The idea is that you're blocking the queen's defense of the third rank here, so queen e3 check is coming in, and if you take, I just go check, check, here, and b2, and this b pawn is totally unstoppable, and yeah, somehow the black king isn't that weak. Yeah, maybe you need a couple of moves somehow for it to happen. So this would just be awesomely strong. c4 was a total win for black. And in a way, it's a bit strange that that Lei didn't play it, because yeah, the move that she came up with was was a real panic move, really. But I think, yeah, you know, she was very short of time. No increments until move 40 in this match. So you're just playing the good old-fashioned way with, you know, hanging flag, and you can lose on time before move 40. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that playing the first game with this time control somehow, you know, I think this had a big effect, because she played the move queen e6, which everything just collapses. After queen takes c5, we've got rook e5, we've got queen takes f8, we've got rook d6, the whole house is collapsing. Well, black played knight d7, which was desperate, I think, but not a bad attempt, really, because after rook d7, queen d7, queen f8, we do have this massive b-pawn to cause some problems. So queen d1 check was played. I was expecting king g2, I have to say, but bishop f1 was the engine move. b3. But now, yeah, I mean, Zhongyi Tan was also very short of time here as well, and not easy to get a grip here. The engine suggests a really nice idea here, which is to go e4. And you're getting this bishop active with gain of tempo because you're actually threatening queen takes f5 checkmate here. And after fe, you give this check, king f6, and then queen b5. And the amazing thing is that this black king's in huge danger. That is not at all obvious, I can tell you. After queen c2, we go bishop c4, attacking the pawn. And if you go b2, queen b6 check, this is just completely winning. If you head this way, we're going to mate you. And if you go to e7, I go queen c7 check. And if you ever go to a light square, well, king f8, queen d8 is checkmate. Very nice, actually. And if king b5, bishop b5, discovered attack. Oh, lovely. So e4 would have been the way. Black played queen e8 check, king h7, queen b5, and on Mastodon during the game I said that I explained that I couldn't actually find anything wrong with queen b1. The big problem is that you're just going to shepherd the pawn home, and if the white king tries to escape, you just go, queen e4 check. So I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe e4. But yeah, b2 simply, and I hadn't looked much further. It was the game was still ongoing before I managed to toot again on Mastodon, but this is just a draw. The engines don't find any more. So actually queen b1, even this moment, Lei could have just pulled a draw out of the fire there. The move f4 was quite a nice idea. You're trying to either open the white king or constrict it, really. But yeah, it's leaves this diagonal open, and Tan grabs her chance and plays queen d3 check, and here black resigned. Queen d3, bishop d3 check. We take the pawn, and then, well, yeah, this pawn is a goner. So there we are. What a dramatic game. I thought it was an interesting opening. Quite a clever opening choice, but I thought that Lei reacted very, very nicely, and I like her plan a lot more than any of the engine moves, actually. Or any of the previous really human play up till now. Just take the knight and castle, put all your pawns on dark squares, and just try and clamp down on white there. But it was very interesting that I'm always like this. I think that when I sense that as black I've got loads of unclear chances, I always tend to overestimate my chances, and this was probably what I was doing for Lei. But still, I think that it was probably still a bit easier for black to play than white. But all credit to Zhongyi Tan. I mean, she the general plan that she found was excellent, and I mean, I'd completely misassessed this position. I thought that black was really so much better, but these were excellent moves to keep the pressure. And then there was just that moment. You often see this in tense human games, that engines point out there was a moment where the game could have turned around completely, and then, and then it went back to a little bit, where it was heading to before somehow. This was a nice defense. I think, very good practical try. And if Lei could just have found this move, queen b1, then a draw would have been assured. But it wasn't to be. But there we are, a tumultuous first game. Really great. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of these games. I think this is going to be a very nervy affair, this match. But I think we're going to have lots of drama and lots of great chess. So really looking forward to it. So there we are. If you enjoyed this video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, certainly keep your eyes peeled because I'm going to try and cover as many of the games as possible from this match. Take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, and the associated Chessable course, which is absolutely great, even though I say it myself. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hopefully see you for some subsequent videos. Thanks for watching.